Today's session is Fiery XF Layout Option. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today, Carrie Maloney, Field and Channel Marketing Manager, and John Nate, Worldwide Technical Product Training Manager. So with that, let's begin. Carrie, please take it away.
Thank you, Yael. The Fiery XF Layout option, powered by ESCO Technology, provides an advanced toolset for file layout above and beyond the basic capabilities of Fiery XF and Fiery Pro Server. Anyone needing media saving, wanting to more easily create file cut paths or bleed, or simply wanting to produce nested layouts more efficiently will greatly benefit from the layout option. Performing these tasks with the layout option is much more productive versus using application-level methods. Plus, it brings consistency to your workflows as any file type that can be printed can benefit from the layout option features. Before John takes you through the setup and details of the layout option, we'd like to find out how you create your advanced layouts today. So we'd like to take a quick poll, and we'll give you a moment to complete these. You'll now see 2 questions on your screen. You can choose more than one option per question. Okay, thank you. I'll now hand you over to John Nate to take you through the Fiery XF and Fiery Pro Server layout option.
Thank you very much, Carrie, and thank you, y'all, and welcome everyone to today's session. What I'll be covering today is what exactly is the Fiery XF layout option. The Fiery XF layout option provides a number of major benefits. Probably the primary reason people purchase the layout option, which is an add-on to Fiery XF or Fiery Pro Server, is what we call true shape nesting. And I'll get into what true shape nesting is in a bit, but it will greatly save time and, even more important, will greatly save expensive media on your nesting jobs. It can also be used to create cut paths and bleed within this option. Now, cut paths and creating bleed is something that Fiery XF on its own cannot do. It has to be, the file would have to be sent back to the content creator for the application person who created the graphic in the first place to do this. Well, we can do that right within the layout option, save all that time. We can also set up for double-sided printing, and this is kind of an interactive thing that I'll show you in a bit, where again, it allows for modification after the original is created. Now, the layout option is a Windows-only program. You can test this program for yourself. At the end of today's session, we're going to tell you how you can apply for and get a license for the layout option to add to your system so you can test it for a month and see what the benefits are in your own situation. But this is a separate install. In a normal Fiery XF implementation, when you install Fiery XF, you install every option except the cut server. Well, the layout option would also be part of this. So all you're going to need is the license, and you will be ready to go. And again, we'll show you how to get these trial licenses at the end of today's program. But let's start with kind of an examination of the features of the layout option compared to Fiery XF. Now, in the standard Fiery XF and Fiery Pro Server install, we honor bounding boxes when we do a nesting. And however large that bounding box is, however much additional media there is around the image, that's all XF is able to honor. Where with the layout option add-on, we can honor cut paths, greatly saving media. We can also only rotate in 90-degree increments in the standard implementation. We can rotate in 1-degree increments in the layout option. Again, fitting those little elements in between each other, much more efficient. You can add cut paths in Fiery XF or Pro Server. We can automatically or manually add a cut path with the layout option. We cannot modify an existing cut path. We can only accept it in Fiery XF or Pro Server, but we have a full set of cut path editing tools in the layout option. You cannot generate bleed on an image in the standard Fiery XF and Pro Server. However, we can automatically create bleed with a number of variables within the layout option. And finally, to do double-sided printing in the standard Fiery XF and Pro server, it's a manual process. It either has to be done ahead of time and sent as a PDF set up for double-sided printing, or you need to do it within the FireX interface. And getting that last little bit of accuracy, well, it can be kind of time-consuming. However, it can be automatically done within the layout option, again, greatly saving time. Before we actually get into the details and take a look at the interface itself, we'd like to see the poll results. Guys, what are the poll results this morning?
Here, let's take a look. So, what do you think? What's your thoughts here?
Well, it's interesting that I see a third of the group wants to keep their information secret. So you're all among friends. You can share. It's okay. But I'm seeing, yes, Fiery XF and a fair amount done in Illustrator, a little bit in InDesign and other packages. And those are the packages that we most commonly see. It's a manual process. You have to be very, very cautious. So I think you guys especially are going to be very interested in seeing what some of the features of the layout option are. It's also nice to see that we already have some layout option users here on the call this morning. So hopefully you'll learn a little bit additional about your product also this morning.
All right, great. So let's move on.
Thank you. So again, reminder, if you have any questions, please use the little Q&A window, and we will get to as many as we can at the end of today's presentation. Well, let's start with the interface overview of the layout options itself. There are some default options that need to be set, or I should say can be set. They are options within the layout option itself. You can set up a default document setup, or XF could accept the default size, or the layout option, I should say, could accept the default size from the job itself when it's being tossed over to the layout option. You can define a media size, and you can define margins. You can set the units of measurement. So no matter where you are in the world, you can set a unit of measurement that you're comfortable working with. You can also, and this is kind of important, and again, something that's not within Fiery XF itself, you can define a cutting tool diameter. Any of you working on these large flatbed cutters from, say, Colex or Multicam or Zund, there's a diameter to a lot of these cutting bits. They're all not just little thin cutting blades. And to have that diameter built in so that it knows when it builds the cut path is very, very, very useful to make sure that the cut path is really as accurate as you want it to be. The interface itself of the default is just under the document setup. It's very, very simple and straightforward. You can set a default document name. This is the name that will be coming back from the layout option to Fiery XF. When you generate a layout and return it to XF, it comes back as a PDF file. Now, this is important. You can bring in 10, 15, 20 different elements. You can step and repeat them, nest them, do all this nesting, and it comes back as one solid, contiguous PDF file. Now, that PDF file can be harvested or retrieved, and it can be archived. So in the future, if you need to print that layout again, and maybe you've spent a fair amount of time getting it just the way you want it, well, you can grab that PDF file. Okay, so you can give it a default name, or you can just rename it later. You can set the sheet size and width, and then you can set the margins. Notice there's a little chain link here. I've got that broken so I can independently set the top, bottom, left, and right margins for solid media, rigid media. I could also link those, and then whatever I set for the top margin propagates through and sets the same margin for bottom, left, and right. At the bottom, then, we have the area for the backing up, for the turn or tumble, I should say. So you're going to work and turn, just flip it left to right, or work and tumble, flip top to bottom. Okay? That, again, is only important if you're setting up for double-sided printing. Other than that, it really doesn't need to be set up. Then for the cut path, we've got something called the milling compensation. That's the compensation for the diameter of the bit. Notice if I've got a cut path that's drawn just as straight lines, well, what exactly is supposed to happen here with a bit that is really kind of going round? I can set the minimum tool diameter, and I can position it inside or outside. So am I going outside and I'm going to cut a little beyond, or am I going to cut inside and just kind of round that corner? So again, two of your options, how you want to set the tool diameter and where exactly you want that cut path to go. So with those very, very few default options set up, and again, it takes just a minute, then we can get on to the main reason, as I said, for people to use the layout option, and that is true shape nesting. True shape nesting, primary reason, save media. Okay? It also greatly saves time, as you'll see. But what it does is it honors cut paths rather than the bounding boxes that FireEXF will honor. It can rotate in the 1-degree increments. It automates this layout process. It still allows for scaling and for multiple copies. Now, here's a screenshot from within FireEXF. I have a number of cars. We're actually going to see this within the interface in just a bit. And this is a 96-inch long sheet of media. Now, note the bounding boxes. We can honor bounding boxes, and all the other smaller cars are either vertical or horizontal. That's that 90% increments that we can rotate only. However, take a look at that same layout within the layout option. Boy, these guys are turned and twisted any which way and dropped in. And I'm honoring cut paths. It just brings them together close to the cut paths. I don't have to worry about the bounding boxes. Look at all this media I've saved. But actually, it goes beyond that, because this layout actually needs 20 additional inches off of a second sheet of media in order to fulfill this same layout. Okay, so we are looking at a 32% savings between the traditional FireEXF and the layout option. It also would obviously do faster cutting. I'm only putting down one sheet of media and letting it cut all these out rather than putting down this sheet and then switching to this and doing the second layout for the cutting. So let's see how this actually works within the interface itself. I've got a number of individual cars here, and we can zoom in and see them, and we can see there are the bounding boxes all selected, and then put together. Here is my nesting. This is the nesting we just saw within the PowerPoint that we were just looking at. Well, if I want, I can move these over to the layout option. Now, this is the layout option icon. You'd only see this in Windows. You only see it on the Job Explorer. It's not in the System Manager because there's really nothing to set up on the System Manager side. In order to use it, you select one or multiple images. Now, I can Control-click and select multiple images, or I can Shift-click and select multiple images. And once I do, and I click on the layout option, then the layout option launches, and here are all of these cars brought in. Now, if I click on them, double-click, you'll see here is this particular car, and here is this large bounding box around the image. Now, someone was very, very nice with these images and went through and actually built a cut path. You can see this cut line. I'm going to go to View and View Mode, or Preview, and go into high resolution so we can see this a little better. There we are. So there is our cut line that someone drew for us. If we take a look on the right, there is a drop-down list, and it shows the colors, and it shows die line. That's the name of that extra channel, that cut path. The prior production webinars that we did, that we will have links for you at the end, can show you how some of these cut paths can be created and lead you to additional resources for actually creating these cut paths. But here's a cut path that's already been drawn on this element. So I can select that and say, yes, I want to use the cut path. Now, notice the bounding box has been tightened up to the cut path. Haven't saved all the media. I still have this excess media here, but at least the additional media beyond the horizontal and vertical limits of the document are still fine. Now, I'm going to grab this guy and also set it to the die line, and I'm going to scale this. I'm going to say I want this scaled 50%, and I can also set the quantity here. I'm going to say I need 6 of these. So this is scaled 50%, 6, and I've got the die line selected. I went through and I already selected the die line for these other objects. Now this other red car, I've got 25% scale and I want 15 of these. Okay. Well, with all of those selected, let's go look at the layout panel. This is where the magic happens, okay? This is where we get into it. Now I'm going to go into File and Document Setup, and I'm going to change this to my document size. There we go. Okay, so there is my document, and I'm going to set it for minimal waste, or I can switch to fast, very fast, accurate, very accurate. The more accurate, the more time you're giving the layout option to just fit and twist and turn and rotate these elements and switch them around to try to get them with the least amount of media being used. I'm going to go very fast just so we can see how this works. I can respect the graphics order as they came in. Well, still, I want those in that order. You can rotate things around, but I still want them basically in the same order they were brought in. I want to start from the top left, and I want to fill horizontally. And then the gutter, how much space do I want? Well, my bit, I talked to the operator, and he said, well, give me a ½ an inch in between the gutters, between cutting. Rotation, I can block the rotation or rotate still in 90-degree increments, the same as Fiery XF or Pro Server, or I can allow any angle. Now, once I've got those set, I can say Find Layout Now, and this is when XF starts putting and fitting these together and trying to do the best job it can of getting everything laid out. And it calculates, and you can already see we're starting to rotate and save media and drop things a little closer, and there we are. You can see they're all placed much, much more tightly than they were. This is all in one layout. I've got everything put together, and when I'm finished, I can simply go to Export. It finishes the layout, and it sends it as a PDF file back to Fiery XF. And here we are. We have our final layout. Again, untitled PDF. Remember, I didn't change the name of the default document, but I can go to my input folder and grab this untitled PDF file, and I can bring it in and archive it if I want to do this next month. Customer says, hey, I'm going to have these printed, every month or two or every quarter I'm going to want 50 of these boards. Well, we're all set next time. Okay? So this greatly, greatly saves time and greatly saves media. Now, well, that was kind of easy because the system had already had the cut path, or I should say the images, had already had the cut path created. Well, what if a cut path doesn't exist? Well, then we can go through and we can actually create cut paths within the layout option. We can create new cut paths, or we can edit the path that the layout option creates, or an existing cut path in any document that we bring into the layout option. The editing can be done manually. The creating can be done manually, or it can be automated. We can also automate what's called optimization. Optimization is cleaning up the cut path. You'll see that in just a bit. This works with vector or raster graphics. We can also create what's called an offset. I want to cut a little beyond the document, or I want to undercut. I want to cut into the document a little bit. I want to make sure that that little sliver of white doesn't show through. I can do that with a number of tools. I can do with the offset, or I can do with the bleed, or combination. And again, adding that bleed is one of the major reasons, or one of the major tools that we can use to prevent that little extra white sliver. Okay, so let's start by looking at vector art. In vector art, we select the option Outline All Objects. That's what vector art is. Vector art is a combination of objects, of rectangles, of polygons, of triangles, of lines. Okay? I can choose to remove the holes. The holes. You might have areas within the document that also have effectively blank areas, solid areas, nothing there. Well, do we want an actual cut path created there, or do we not want that cut path? I can then set up a smooth factor. Okay, do I want to follow every little nook and cranny of the original image, or do I need a little smoother line? Small contours. What's the smallest area that I can get my blade or my knife or my routing tool into? And do I want to create an offset at all? Okay. Any of you that were here for the past sessions on the production series have come to know and love our little cartoon here, our little cartoon bull that we have used. Now, in the prior session, I showed you how to use Illustrator to create a cut path kind of automatically within Illustrator for this type of a graphic, for a vector graphic. And we added a layer and we copied all of these elements and pasted them in the second layer and hid the first layer and flattened the transparency, and then went into some other tools to combine all of the elements, and it was a number of steps to go through to create that. Well, as you're going to see shortly within the layout option, it's pretty much automatic. All you have to do is set your tolerances and bang, there you've got it. We can also create an offset if we need. Again, this can be a positive or negative. Well, let's see how this actually works. How easy is this? So I'm going to go into my cut, and here's our little bull diagram, and I'm going to go into the layout option. And let me switch over to the option and wait for the graphic to arrive. Again, the Fiery XF is now exporting this graphic, and then it will be imported into the layout option. And here it is, and there's our little graphic. Let me go back to, again, I want to go into high resolution, so this looks very, very nice. Okay, so here is our graphic. And, well, if I go over to the trim box here, you can see cyan, magenta, yellow, black. Nope. Nobody drew a cut path in this document at all. So let's see how difficult this is. Preparation, create cut path, and we decided 0.01, and 0.01 seemed to work. And let's preview that. Oh, that's it. We're done. If I zoom in, we can see there is the cut line that was drawn. I click OK, and there is my cut path, all finished, all ready to go. And again, then I can select how many of these elements I need, go into the layout side, and I could assemble this into my final document of however many copies of this little bull guide that I need. Now, if I want to create an offset, prepare, again, create cut paths, and I'm going to go in and just say 0.1 inch. And notice there the cut path has now been extended beyond. Well, that's pretty big, and I'm not sure I like that there, so I'm going to go into create cut path. Let me change it to 0.05, half that distance. There we are. That's probably going to work. Okay, now we've got this nice white border all around and ready to go. And again, all I would have to do is nest this, or I could even just send this one element back to Fiery XF as one standalone image. Okay? But it's just that easy to generate a cut path for vector elements. All right, let's take a look at raster graphics. How about if we've got raster art? So raster art is, of course, photographs, bitmaps, TIFFs, JPEGs, columns and rows of dots. How do we deal with that? Well, we don't have elements, so here what we do is we select the Trace Edges option. Now, picture this as the magic wand tool in Photoshop. Any of you that have used that tool will know you just go in and you click on the background, and it will do a great job of just selecting all the pixels that are like or within a particular tolerance area, and that's where the tolerancing and resolution comes in, where you can set how accurate do you want to be when you select the pixels. Do you want every pixel that is incredibly close to the pixel you selected, or are you going to be a little more liberal, a little more generous with what the system selects? Okay. Again, we have the option to remove holes, just like we did in our vector art, and the same smooth and offset settings. Yeah, so a lot of the same settings. We're just talking trace edges instead of really follow the outline that already exists there with our vector art. So to create the cut path, we would just go in and trace edges, and you can see the line being drawn here. It's red, it's kind of a red car, so a little more difficult to see. But with the preview, we can then give it a little better idea, and it shows up a little better as this thin red line. Okay, so we can see how well of a job that the tool did in creating this. And again, we can create an offset. We can move that cut path away from. Or again, the negative offset, I can move it in and undercut or overcut the image a little bit to make sure, again, that that little white line is not showing up. Okay, let's take a look at this. I'm going to go into my cut area, my cut and bleed image, and again, I will export this into the layout option. Let's give it a few seconds for it to appear. There it is. Double click on it, and there it is. Okay, let's look at the cut path. Oh, no cut path, nothing at all. And this again is kind of a low-res TIFF file. And if we zoom in here, you can see that well, there's a lot of chatter going on here. It's pretty clean white. But if I go into preparation and create cut path, now I'm going to select trace images. And here's this little eyedropper. I can select my background color. Okay, which in this case is 0%. There's no cyan, magenta, yellow, black ink. And I've got the tolerance set at 2 to begin with. And look at the preview. Well, let me take off the offset here so it's a little easier to see what's going on. There we go. Okay, and you can see because of the smoothing factor, it did a pretty good job here. I'm going to actually lower the smoothing factor. Oops, raised it, excuse me. Okay, now if you take a look here, you can see, let me turn off the preview for a second, see all the little nooks and crannies here and turn on the preview, and you can see it's following this along. Well, I can go into tolerance and I can raise the tolerance and I can smooth this, or as you saw, I can switch to a larger smoothing factor to come up with a nice line here for my graphic. And I click OK, and there is the line. A few little bumps and nicks, but this could also be straightened out by using the optimization tools. We'll take a look at those in just a bit. But it is just that easy with raster art to do the same as we saw with vector art, to be able to create that outline. Now, you see this little hole right here. I'm going to go back into preparation, create cut path, and I'm going to turn off remove hole. And go into preview. And you see now it would also create a cut path here. Well, if I don't want that, I don't want that extra cut path, then I'm going to turn on the remove holes, and now it will not do that. It will just do the outside of my element. Okay? So that's what I'm going to want. All right, let's take a look at some of the additional tools we have for editing these cut paths. We've now created a cut path, and you saw with vector art, very easy, with raster art, very easy, but well, it's not necessarily perfect. So how do we fix, or what happens if it's not as simple as, well, at least someone put the artwork on a white background, so it's easy to work with? Well, not always the case. So then it comes to the editing cut path tools. Now, first, we have our draw cut path, where I can draw different shapes. Our clean cut path, where I can modify an existing or a newly drawn cut path, and something called the nick tool. The nick tool adds gaps to your cut path. So I'll cover that in just a bit. Let's begin by taking a look at the draw cut path tool. It's a little scissors icon. As you can see, we've got the rectangle icon, where we just simply draw rectangles. The oval, where I can draw circles or ovals, or the ever-popular polygon, where I'm drawing Bezier curves. I'm drawing straight lines or curved lines, whether I'm dragging the line. This will be the same type of tool that you would see in Illustrator, in Photoshop, anywhere where you would draw Bezier curves, in Corel Draw, where you would draw Bezier curve outlines. It's exactly the same tool. So if you're used to the tools there, you will be used to the tools here. Let's start by looking at the Clean Path tool next. Now, the Clean Path tool, I can take a cut path and I can redraw it. I can kind of cut the cut path. Okay, well, we'll see that in just a bit. I can also move individual points. I could delete points. And I could actually change the start point and direction. By default, the layout option will honor, as will FireEXF, will honor the cut path start point where the artist began to draw that cut path. And the direction that the artist drew the cut path in will also be followed. Well, for various reasons. Sometimes the operator of the cutter doesn't want to do that. He wants to start in a different area, or she might want the cutter to go in a different direction. So you can also work with that. All right, let's take a look back in our layout option. Now, take a look down here. You see this little guy right here? That's a collar. The person who blocked out this image got a little overzealous with the cut path, or with the blocking out of the pixels. And this whole area, this collar part, is now going to be cut off. Well, that's not going to look so good. So what I can do is I'm going to grab this tool, and give me one moment. I see if I can get it on screen here. There we are. It moves to the other monitor. So this is the first tool, the cut path and redraw shortest part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and just drag it over to here, and notice what happened. It connected the dots. So this entire area that was going to be cut out is now solid. Now it's still going to be white. Okay, that I can't fix. That would have to go back to the original artist if that wasn't supposed to be white. But you can see how easy it is to just simply draw and fix these areas. Okay, I can also click the Move tool. I can grab and move. Okay, and I can move individual dots. I can change the Bezier curve, angle. Standard set of tools. No difference at all from what we've seen in any other programs we work with. So you can go through and you can fix and try to fix these little nicks and make it as nice as you possibly can. Well, what about that nick tool? The nick tool adds those little gaps, and the tool will show you the diameter. It shows you a diameter of a circle, and it's actually adding a gap. It's going to make an area here where the cut tool will skip. It will lift right here, move over, and restart the cut. You have an option to set the diameter. Okay, smaller diameter, smaller circle, smaller gap, smaller little nick. And it's just as easy as selecting the tool. A little easier to grab this guy. And I'm going to set it for our 0.1/10. And there's my circle. And any place here I want, I can add this nick. Now, the nick serves several purposes. Okay? You'll notice as soon as I move on, it shows it there, but I can still grab that and I can reposition it if I need to. The nick will make sure that once this graphic is cut out of the background media, it will not fall out. It will not drop out. It will stay attached to. This can make pulling these boards off of the device a little easier. You don't have all these little pieces that are falling all over the place. Also, it can greatly help protect the images, especially if you're shipping these. Imagine if you had this image and you were printing many of these up on a board, and then you printed several boards and these had to be shipped somewhere. Well, if these were still all attached to the surrounding media, it's much easier to protect these in shipping. You put one board on the bottom, stack these guys on top, put a board on the top, wrap them up, and off they go, and much less likely that they're going to get damaged. Then whoever receives the final will just pop them out when they receive the image. Or when you receive the package. You set the nick diameter based on what you think or what you feel you're going to need for combination of make sure it stays put and make sure it's easy to pop out. You don't want to have someone get a saw blade out to do the final cutout on the receiving end of the document. But as you can see, very easy to modify existing cut paths, completely change how a cut path is being used to fix areas that just aren't working well, remove the holes in documents, and add those little nicks. Okay, but there's still more to this tool, and that is optimizing cut paths. Now, first of all, we've got smoothing. Here is before smoothing. You can see it's following all the little nooks and crannies, and then here it is after smoothing. Well, let's take a look at that in real life. Let's take this document that I want to do for double-sided printing, and again, bring it, let me go back into our layout option and clear the slate, get rid of this guy. Okay, and then go back in here and export this guy into our layout option. And there he is. Isn't he cute? Now, if I go into preparation and say create cut path, start again with our default of 2% and see what happens here. I'm going to go into preview. Okay, that looks like a pretty horrible cut path. Let's take a look at this. And you can see there's obviously pixels, stray pixels here that are beyond that 2% tolerance from absolute pure white. So what I'm going to do is while I'm zoomed in here, I'm just going to simply start increasing this tolerance. And just live, I can see where, there. If you notice, the last of those few stray pixels finally just disappeared. Okay, and now I can click OK. But, well, yeah, that's not looking real good there. So now I'm going to go into preparation, and I want to select Optimize Cut Path. And set this for 0.2. And when you work with this, 0.2. When you work with this tool, you'll start to get a feel for your particular artwork and what various settings are going to be. So you're going to want to play around with this tool to begin with. There's so many options and so many variables you can use to really help you create the perfect cut path. So you see here, I'm just going to click Optimize, and there it is, all straightened out. Okay. Now I'm going to go to Edit Undo and do 0.01. and click Optimize. Okay, you'll notice it didn't go quite as well, but this is a multiple tool. You can go again and again and again, and slowly it will enhance the image until you get to what you want. Okay, so we'll go right to that. Now, you'll notice there's still some gaps here. This cut path, well, I could undercut this. Well, you know, we've got other tools also we can look at. And that is our bleed tool. With our bleed tool, again, here's our little guy. You see there's white gaps here. Well, I can use the Create Bleed tool to extend pixels beyond the image itself. Okay, let's take a closer look at this. Here is a close-up of the hand of our little guy. And when you launch this tool, you have three variables. The first is clone from, and that is the thick line here is the actual cut path. That's the outline. How far in do I want to go to sample pixels? If you remember, there's a white gap inside the cut path already on some of these. The cut path is not perfect. If I did a very small clone from factor, it might actually grab those white pixels. Well, I want to go far enough in so I'm actually in image detail. And then bleed distance, how far out do we want to bleed? Now, force cloning means go to the clone from and then clone from the cut path out to the bleed distance. If force cloning is turned off, it's going to grab the pixels that are right underneath that cut path. And in the case of this particular graphic, it would grab those white pixels. Okay, so we don't want that. Okay, let's again take a look at our file here. And preparation, I'm going to go into Create Bleed. And again, I've got my bleed distance. Whoops, let me close the optimize guy here. And I'll start with bleed distance of 0.19, just a little bit, and I want to clone from 0.02, just a little bit in. Okay, and I'm going to say force clone. Actually, I'll turn off force cloning, and let's look at what that looks like. Okay, you'll see underneath here are pretty much white pixels. There's just nothing there. Okay, so I will undo that. Bleed. Let's do force cloning. Create. Okay, not too bad, but do you see these gaps here? And if I zoom in, you can see that where I cloned from, well, I was actually already beyond that. Undo. Create bleed. Let's go to our 0.05. 0.05. I want to do just a little bit of cloning. Force clone. And there we are. I've now got a nice clean area that I've cloned from and to. Imagine trying to do this on a graphic back in Photoshop. Okay? Not the easiest thing to do. In other programs, pretty much don't have a tool like this. This greatly enhances the final cutout of the document. Let's face it, we have customers that send us files that aren't always necessarily the perfect original document. These have been JPEG'd. We have JPEG artifacts around that make sampling of backgrounds very, very difficult. Well, tools like this can greatly help you create the perfect cut path. Okay, so let's now look at our last tool that we're going to look at today, which is double-sided printing. So double-sided printing, it, again, automates the process, but the graphics are still independent, as you'll see in a bit. And it allows for placement modification. So here I have a document set up for double-sided printing, and you'll notice they're fit in nice and tight. But what if I decided that I need the second side? Well, it automatically sets, again, this would be, again, whether it's work and turn or work and flip. Do you need the excess on the right-hand side? How are you going to flip this board and send it through again? It automatically generates the second side. Okay? But I can still move elements. If I modify the first side, hey, it automatically modifies the second side. Let's take a look. Back in our layout option, I've got an icon down here, and I click it. And this little panel comes up. Now, for the back side of the graphic, here I can also say number of ordered, okay? But for the back side of the graphic, I can say I want to use the same graphic on the back. Or I could load another graphic that I brought in. This is important for, let's say, signage that has text on it. If there's text on the sign, you don't want the back to be a flipped version of the front because all the text would be backwards. So someone would actually have to generate the back side of the document. So there you would grab the back side of the document. Here we're using the same. There's no text that I have to worry about, so it's not that important, and I can just say, you know, yep, flip it horizontally. Okay? And it's just that easy. Okay? I'm going to say I want 6 of these guys. Now I'll leave scaling the same size. Go into layout, and now I can say, find the layout. And here it is, putting them together. A little different size media than what I have in the PowerPoint, so it's fitting them just in one row. So I can show a little better modifying this layout. Okay, and there we go. They're all set. And here's the little icon up here to look at the back side. So notice, here's the excess space on the left side or the top side of the sheet. Here it is on the other side. And now, if I say, yeah, but he is actually supposed to be down here, and he is supposed to be right there. And I go to the second page, and it's already been updated. And I can work on either side. It doesn't matter. And I can fine-tune this document to exactly what I need. Okay? Imagine if this were already prepared in the original document, the original PDF that was sent to FireEXF or ProServer. You'd have to get back to the artist. Oh, let's hope it's not lunch. Let's hope it's not 10 after 5 on a Friday on a long weekend, because you promised the customer that she could stop by on her way in on Monday morning and pick up 200 of these little guys all trimmed out, ready to go for the hospital benefit. Well, whole lot easier to fix it when you can do this work right in the layout option within FireEXF and ProServer. Again, then this would be exported and sent back to our FireEXF program. And there it would be. I've got to rotate it and change the size of the media. I had that default 4 foot by 8 foot that I had set up. But this would then be printed. And again, I could archive this and set as many of them as I want, bring it in again at a later date, and pretty much life is good. So how has this layout option helped us? Well, the layout option helps us primarily, as you saw in a number of cases, by saving media. Primarily with the true shape nesting, but also with the ability to build better cut paths and to rotate elements in 1 degree media or 1% increments. And let's face it, some of this media is very expensive. And we've had clients. I had a client not too long ago say that they paid for this option within about a month and a half on just media savings alone. Okay, let alone the time benefit that they've been able to also gain. Okay, being able to do it right within the program rather than go back to additional staff and back to the original applications. Okay? We're able to build and edit the cut paths. We can add that bleed, which again helps enhance the final cut. We're not limited to, well, not the best original artwork to build these cut paths from. We can also prepare for double-sided printing and able to archive any of these complex PDF layouts for future printing. So as you can see, the advanced layout can really, really bring a lot of enhancements to your installation of FireEXF or Fire ProServer and to your workflow in general. Thanks for your time. Carrie, back to you.
Thank you, John. That was a very complete overview. So to recap on what we learned about the layout option, we learned how the option can dramatically save media with true shape nesting, how it can save time by making light work of complex nests including double-sided printing. We learned how the option can increase job handling with automatic cut path and bleed generation when these don't exist within the original file, and that the option can help produce superior printed products by using tools to create perfect cut contours suitable for the equipment being used or products being produced. If you'd like to learn more, we have some resources for you. We have the ESI knowledge base, where the full documentation for the FireEXF layout option is available to download. We also have a layout option overview, which is a 2-minute overview video that you can share with colleagues to show the concept of the layout option. Another resource is our offer for you to trial the layout option and test the savings for yourself. Simply complete the form available on the landing page that you'll receive as a follow-up from this session. So today was our last in the World of Fiery wide format production series and the final of the wide format sessions for 2015. If you missed or wish to revisit any of the previous wide format sessions, the link contained in the PDF that you'll receive takes you directly to those locations. Also, watch out for the World of Fiery Webinars 2016 wide format schedule email later in this year. Or visit the webinars calendar on EFI.com to see all World of Fiery sessions as they become available. Okay, so I think we have some time for some questions, Yael, do we?
Oh, certainly. Let's get going. Quite a number of questions have already come in, so audience, if you have questions, don't hesitate to put these through. We have about 10 minutes. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Carrie, please go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so on this session we've answered a few of the questions as John went through the detail, but we do still have more. So let's start with Does the layout option, John, work with all versions of FireXF, or do I need to be on the latest version?
The layout option was added in version 5. We're currently on version 6. So if you have version 5 or 6, the layout option should work with no problem. If you don't have the current version of FireXF, you can let us know and we can get you, in addition to the trial version of the layout option, we could also get you a trial version of the current version of FireXF so that you could install it and actually test both, see what the current version of XF has to offer, and in the case of this webinar, more importantly, see what the layout option has. So the layout option goes back a few years, so as long as you're not a really, really old version of FireXF, you should be good to go.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, and next question, how do I get the layout option?
If you installed, again, the current or one of the recent versions of FireXF, the layout option is actually installed, again, only on the Windows side of the platform. If it's installed, all you need to do is get an EAC code, an entitlement access code from us. You would go to the Activate FireXF icon from your XF control icon, plug in that EAC code that we give you, and restart your system, and bang, you will have that little icon on the Job Explorer for trying the layout option. So it is simply an unlock code that we send, just like an unlock code for the color profiler or the cut marks option, any of these other options. Everything is installed when you install FireXF. All you need to do is get a code and unlock it.
Okay, next question is how can I set up or select the output workflow different from the one where my input files were prepared?
You aren't able to. By default, the layout option, because it is tied into XF, it will bring files back into whichever workflow you have brought the jobs from. So if you brought jobs in from the nesting workflow, it will return the final nested PDF back to this workflow. If you brought it from the cut workflow, it would return them to the cut. Here's the little guy that we just brought in, brings it back. However, I can take this guy, right-click, and say move to workflow and move it to my finished workflow. And I get the little warning. It says, do you want to hold the job? Yes, I want to hold the job. But now if I go to the finished, now both of these are in the finished. So you can move it once it's in, okay? But you can't set the layout option to automatically send files back to a different location from whence they came. They'll go back to the same spot.
Okay, next question is how do we archive?
To archive, you would just simply go into the input folder for FireXF, and different folder, different locations depending upon which version of Windows you happen to be on. Current versions all has to be 64-bit, so it's a little better, but should be in the server folder in the program data folder. But you'd be looking for the file name here. And the easiest thing to do is if you were to take this file, check this name, and then just do a search for where that file is, and then you'll know on your system where these files will always go, because it always goes to the same spot, and then you can just grab them out of there and copy them, paste them somewhere else, drag them out of there, archive them, move them to a different drive, or archive them to a DVD, any way you want to archive them. So all you have to do is go to the input folder and grab them.
Okay, and somebody would like to know, do we offer on-site training for this option?
Well, we offer on-site training for everything. We have a professional services division that will do either on-site training or WebEx training. And, of course, for our ViewTech customers, we have training in our Meredith facility where you can go there. But, yes, contact your EFI representative, and we can get someone in touch with you from the professional services side of EFI.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple more. We have a few people asking if and how they can implement crop marks and other marks within their advanced layouts.
Good question. So with this particular document, if I were to go to the finishing panel and turn on cut, I can select the particular device. Oh, let's say this is a, let me just grab a GraphTech, for example. GraphTech file. Now, did you notice the document here moved? And if I were to zoom in, we can see that the cut marks are designated, and down at the bottom, well, it went off the document, but we would actually see the little cut marks. If I went in and said I just want iCut marks, then there's our little iCut mark. Okay, and I can set the number and space. So on the cut panel, you would simply initialize it, and this could also be done for the workflow. As it's brought into the workflow, it could be set to automatically honor the cut path, and that's what I would recommend. Again, save that extra little bit of time. Pre-configure it for your cutter. And notice this job came back and it did recognize the cut contour. Because the cut panel was not initialized, it didn't by default recognize it, but all I have to do is click that and right-click on the document, and now my cut contour line will be automatically extracted and sent to my output path for either cut server or just for the cut marks option to use with something like Zund Cut Center or SumaCut.
Okay, we have a few more minutes. So this one is a little bit more of a software problem, John, but maybe you can help, just in the interest of covering as many as we can. Someone's not able to use the layout tool for bitmap files, so TIFF, JPEG, and PSD. The icon is grayed. Any idea what that could be?
They're working in bitmap files, it says?
Yes.
Yeah, bitmaps can cause problems for a number of reasons. We'd actually have to see a sample file and figure out a good way to just quickly do some kind of a conversion or something, but if they can get a sample file up to the support team in Egan, they'll take a look at it, and if they can't solve it, get over to the development team. Might get to me also, but I'll be honest, I haven't seen many bitmap files come through, and just haven't had an opportunity to try it with the layout option myself, but I would expect there would be a fairly easy workaround for it. So give us a sample file and let us have at it.
Okay, thank you, John. And someone would like to know where to find a list of printers supported in FireXF and FirePro Server and cutters. So I can answer that one, John. On EFI.com, there is a tool that you can use on any of the FireXF or FirePro Server pages. You'll see it on the right-hand side, where you can choose supported printers or cutters, choose the make or model, choose the model, make first should I say, and then the model, and you'll see under what version and with what option you need to support any printer or cutter. So when we do the follow-up question and answers PDF, we'll include that link in there.
And just so you can see what that looks like, here is EFI.com. I went to Proofing Production, the FireXF, and there is the supported printers and cutters. And it's just a nice, easy set of drop-down lists. You just simply select your cutter, and it will tell you what you need, what version, what driver, if any, and again, whether it's Windows only or Windows and Mac. Very nice interactive tool.
Carrie, do we want to take one more before we wrap up?
Certainly. Okay, so John, is it possible in the layout tool to export the final layout in the same sheet format as the layout setup? So for example, A4 in and A4 out.
Yes, again, with the document setup, go into File, Document Setup, and set exactly the size of sheet that you want. And again, you can go into the preferences and set this for inches or millimeters, centimeters, etc. Set exactly the size you want, and then the layout option will work within those parameters for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I think we do have additional questions, and as promised at the top of our hour, we will get back to you via email. So you have your answer. We'll also compile one document, an FAQ document, that will have all the questions and answers and make that available to everybody via the landing page, which, as Carrie mentioned, will be coming to you within a few days. So you should expect an email early next week. It'll have a link to the recording, a link to an FAQ, a copy of the presentation, resources that Carrie mentioned. So lots of great information still to come for you. So with that, I want to thank our audience for joining us, and of course our presenters, Carrie and John, for sharing with us a great tool here. Hopefully everybody saw how great this can be for them, and I encourage everybody to go and give it a try. Fill out the short form, and somebody will be in touch with you so you can get your trial version. So until next year, we hope you've enjoyed our World of Fiery webinar series, and hope to see you again in 2016. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.